Ever get that feeling when you're about to eat something and it just looks a little, I don't know, off?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like that questionable leftover in the back of the fridge.
Exactly. And usually your gut's telling you, don't do it. Turns out that same logic applies to the digital world, even if you're not a tech whiz.
Like, even if you don't code, you still have to worry about this stuff.
Well, in a way, yeah, because we all use software, and sometimes that software can be, well, a little off too.
Hmm, interesting.
Today, we're diving deep into one of those cases. Think of it like a poisoned ingredient in a software recipe. Only instead of an upset stomach, we're talking stolen data and financial losses. Fun stuff, right?
Not fun if it happens to you.
Definitely not. So ready to untangle this malicious Python package called aiocpa?
aiocpa. Okay, you're gonna have to break that down for me.
Sure thing. aiocpa was a package uploaded to PyPI, which is basically the go-to place for Python developers to find and download code. It's kind of like the supermarket for Python code, you know? And over 12,000 people downloaded this aiocpa package, not realizing they were inviting a thief into their systems.
Wow, 12,000. That's a lot of potential victims. So, what did this aiocpa thing actually do?
Well, on the surface, it looked like a harmless tool, but under the hood, it was designed to steal something called crypto pay API tokens.
API tokens, right. I've heard of those, but I don't really know what they are.
Think of them like digital keys. They give you access to specific accounts or services, kind of like how a physical key opens your front door.
So in this case, aiocpa was after the keys to people's crypto wallets.
Exactly. And those keys can unlock some pretty serious financial assets.
Ouch. So this wasn't just some random prank. People could have lost a lot of money.
Absolutely. And that's what makes these software supply chain attacks so dangerous. They exploit the trust we place in the tools and resources we use every day. But what really gets me is how the malicious code was hidden so well. How did they do that?
It's all about obfuscation. Imagine taking a simple sentence and then encoding it, compressing it, and then repeating that process like 50 times. That's what these attackers did to their code. They made it a tangled mess, almost impossible to understand.
Wow, 50 times. They must have had a lot of time on their hands. But okay, I get how they hid the code, but what about the package's GitHub repository? Isn't that where the code is stored?
Right, GitHub's like a giant online platform where developers share their code.
And for aiocpa, that repository looked perfectly normal. So if everything looked fine, how are developers supposed to catch this kind of thing?
That's the million-dollar question. It's a huge challenge. Attackers are getting more sophisticated, so simply glancing at download numbers or a package's reputation isn't enough anymore. We need to be digging deeper, scrutinizing the actual source code. But even then, spotting these obfuscated threats can be incredibly difficult.
Ugh, sounds like an uphill battle.
Ugh.
But let's shift gears for a moment. Let's talk motives. Why go through all this trouble to steal crypto pay API tokens? What's the end game here?
Well, without a full-blown investigation, it's tough to say for sure. There are a few possibilities, though. It could be that the original developer's credentials were somehow compromised, and someone hijacked their package for malicious purposes.
So basically, someone broke into the developer's account and turned their tool into a weapon.
Exactly. Or it could be a completely separate attacker who targeted aiocpa specifically, with the goal of draining user funds, or maybe even using those stolen tokens for other nefarious activities.
Man, this is starting to feel like a detective novel. But aiocpa, is this just like a one-off thing? Or are these kinds of attacks more common than we think?
That's the scary part. aiocpa is just the tip of the iceberg. As our reliance on open source software grows, these supply chain attacks are becoming more frequent, more sophisticated, and way harder to detect.
So it's like a constant arms race, huh?
That's a good way to put it. It's a constant back and forth between security researchers and attackers, each trying to outsmart the other.
So are we just sitting ducks here? Is there anything people can do to protect themselves, even if they don't know the first thing about coding?
Well, the first line of defense is awareness. It's like that questionable food analogy we started with. You wouldn't eat something that smelled off, right? So apply that same caution to downloading software.
Pay attention to the warning signs, like where it's coming from, what other users are saying about it. Don't just blindly click install.
Right. Check if it's coming from a reputable source. See if the reviews seem legit. And this applies to everyone, even if you're not a coder. Those basic security practices, like strong passwords and two-factor authentication, they go a long way.
So much of this is about being proactive and not just assuming everything is safe.
Exactly. And for developers out there, it's even more crucial. Be super careful about any third-party code you bring into your projects. Make sure your own security practices are top-notch, and stay updated on the latest threats.
It's a lot to take in. It's like, now I'm paranoid about every piece of software I download.
Well, a little healthy paranoia isn't a bad thing when it comes to digital security.
I guess you're right.
Uh,
Okay, so let's do a quick recap for our listeners. We've untangled this whole aiocpa situation, a malicious Python package that was designed to swipe sensitive data. We talked about how sneaky it was and the bigger implications for all of us who rely on software.
And it's not just about aiocpa, right? It's
Right.
a wake-up call that the software we use every day, the stuff we often take for granted, it can be vulnerable.
Yeah. So here's a question for everyone listening.
Hmm.
How do you vet the software you use? Do you do your due diligence? Or do you just click download without a second thought?
It's something we all should be thinking about.
And hopefully, this deep dive will make everyone a little more cautious, a little more aware the next time they hit that download button. You know, just like you'd think twice before eating that suspicious-looking leftover.
Definitely food for thought, pun intended.
You got that right.